everybody, we're back for another episode of Making Lydia. Today we're going to be making the poncho part of the costume, which is the main part of the costume. I'm going to be using my dress form quite a bit, and my supervisors are both here to provide supervision. Got my fabric laid out nice and smooth, because this is the basic shape that I'm going to cut from. I measured along my mannequin and figured out the width I wanted, and of course when you put fabric out, a cat appears and gets in your way. Get out of the way. So I figured the tunic needs to be 50 inches across by measuring kind of down my shoulder, down my arm, so that the tunic or poncho will fall on my arm where it needs to. And then I'm just evening out the bottom before I get started. Fabric wasn't cut absolutely perfectly, so I did that. And then using the tape measure as kind of a guide, I cut off this extra tail of fabric that I don't need, and got the final piece that I would be working with, which will be 50 inches wide. There it is. And then I was figuring out where I'm going to cut the neck hole. And I was laying my tape measure out, and then I realized, oh goodness, there's that kind of raw edge on the one side, so got rid of that real quick, and then remeasured to make sure that I had appropriate length still had 50 inches, and then I went to the 25 mark, and I went 2 inches out from that in both directions, marked that, and cut a little tab in to those measurements. And once I did that, then I cut the neck out. There's the neck. Now I tried it on just to make sure that the neck hole was big enough to get my head through, and that the poncho would fall to where I wanted it to, and it does. It hits me just above the wrists, kind of a 3/4 length sleeve where that would hit, and it's perfect. So I put it on my mannequin so that I could kind of start to visualize where I needed to cut into the fabric to create the kind of triangle shape through the front of it. So I laid the fabric back down on the floor again and put some items down to help me visualize the triangle that I was going to cut. I used my rotary cutter to cut away the excess. Rotary cutter is kind of like a pizza cutter. It's really a really great tool, but it's really hard to use if you don't have one of those mats to put underneath it, or a big table to put it up on to use it. I was scooting a piece of foam core along underneath it to give it something hard to work against, and that works, but it's a real pain. But I couldn't think of a better way to cut real precise line, so you can see how nice and clean that line is. And then I was measuring and trying to fuss with it and figure out how I could make it match exactly when I realized it's a perfectly symmetrical garment. So then I just realized I could literally just fold it over. So I grabbed it from dead center, 25-inch mark, and I folded it over and used the side I just cut as my template for the other side. And I just cut along the edge I already had, and that worked great. Repeated the same thing with the rotary tool, and you could see it there. It's all finished. Then I slipped it on again to make sure it was doing what I wanted it to, and it did. I was thrilled. Absolutely thrilled. There's a mirror on the wall that I'm able to see myself into. This footage is actually, I didn't know my camera was still rolling. I thought I turned it off, but I had stopped it and restarted it. That was just my actual genuine joy. And then followed shortly by this moment where I realized that the two different colors of fleece I bought came in different lengths. So I was trying to figure out in my brain how I was going to lay them together and get the lining done, and I realized I was just gonna have to do it in a couple pieces. So I got most of the lining underneath the big chunk of the poncho, and then I was gonna have to go back and put a little piece extra in on the bottom. So I started with my Stitch Witchery, and I got the neck fused, the red to the purple fused together. I used my iron and my wet rag method. Rinse, repeat. Did it a bunch around the edges. Pretty soon I had the purple fused with the red inside of it. So then I just had to go through and cut a precise line. If I was smart, I would have just fused the red poncho to the purple without it being cut, fused it, and then cut it afterwards to cut away the excess. That would have been the smarter way, instead of the way I chose to do it, where I tried to cut a matching piece to go under it, and it wasn't perfectly matching. But that is how far I got with it today. I'm going to add the spider webs next, and should have one more part to this, so stay tuned.